The U.S. government kept a secret from its people about Japan invading Alaska on June 7, 1942. Japan wanted to expand its empire in search of resources such as oil, rubber, tin, and nickel for military purposes. Therefore, they conquered countries who were rich with these resources. Rome-Berlin-Tokyo axis was an alliance between Japan, Germany, and Italy in order to expand and dominate different regions of the world. Japan's commander-in-chief, Admiral Yamamoto, came up with a plan to attack on Pearl Harbor. Many soldiers were killed, and some were left wounded. Edmund Layton and Joseph J. Rochefort, both lieutenant commanders, went abroad to learn the Japanese language in order to crack codes for the United States in case of war. They both worked in Station Hypo, which was a dungeon located in the basement of the 14th Naval District. This kept the government secret from everyone except the people who managed it. If an enemy was to capture one of the workers, they would be tortured to reveal top-secret information. On May 25, 1942, Joseph and his team cracked 90% of Japan's ciphered message. This laid out their attack on bombing U.S. forces at Dutch Harbor on Amaknak Island. If Japanese ships were seen, Americans used code words to help alert the military. They would often say, "The boys went out today, but didn't see a boat. They came home and went to eat fried codfish." One day, a ship arrived out in harbor on June 7, 1942. It was hard to tell whether the ship was an American ship or Japanese ship. People mistook it for an American ship due to the thick fog that covered the whole area. That's when the attack on harbor took place. The two ones were held hostage for 3 months and were told that they were being sent to Japan during the war. Instead, they were lied to and sentenced to death. The Japanese military took advantage of the weather system, which Americans didn't know till after. They did secret attacks this way. After conquering two places, Atsu and Kiska, Japan decided to rename them. Atsu was renamed Atsuta Island and Kiska was known as Narakum, which meant June in Japanese. Kiska was supposed to be the weather team's home place, but eventually Japan invaded that place with force. The aerographers burned the top-secret code books and weather ciphers before it laid in the hands of the Japanese. A naval spokesman denied the fact that the Japanese invaded Aleutians, but President Franklin Roosevelt ordered to force the Japanese out of Alaska by bombing Kiska and Atsu continuously. The U.S. came up with a suicidal plan in order to make the Japanese leave. They decided to dive bomb until they ran out of bomb, regardless of the weather. It was done through PBY scouting planes, which was not designed to dive bomb, and some planes didn't even have radar. The air raid between the Japanese and Americans caused many devastation. 2 Japanese ships were sunk, 3 ships were on fire, submarines were destroyed, and 400 Japanese were dead and injured. Alaska Combat Intelligence Platoon, also known as Alaska Scouts, were called Kastner's Cutthroat. They were soldiers in World War II. Their job were to spy on the Japanese without getting caught. A new air base was built on Adak by the Cutthroats in order to get closer to the Japanese invaders and kick them out the Aleutians. The Japanese made a plan to move back to its military base on Kuril Island during the winter. After they found out that the Americans were planning to start a northern invasion of Japan, the Japanese decided to stay back in the Aleutians and occupy forever. The Americans decided the only way they could kick the Japanese out was by going to battle with them. During the battle, Americans realized that they underestimated the Japanese soldier, and that's how they found themselves in the bloodiest and deadliest hand-to-hand combat battles. During the battle, the weather turned chilly and a thick fog appeared. This became a burden on the Americans and an advantage for the Japanese troops. These helped the Japanese camouflage and attack the Americans without being noticed. After the death of the colonel Yamasaki, the remaining soldiers started killing themselves. The colonel ordered them to do that if he was to ever die. This was called the Bushi Code, which stated death before dishonor. They didn't want their families to find out that they were still alive after the defeat. The fight for Atsu was one of the biggest mass suicide in World War II, causing many casualties. The fight was very costly in human lives. It killed 549 out of 15,000 American soldiers, and it killed 2,650 Japanese, leaving only 29 alive. Some of the hostages returned back to the Aleutian Island after the Japanese retreated. Their condition turned worse, since their homes were damaged and they all had to live in small buildings which had one sink and bathtubs. The water was contaminated and they had no privacy since they all lived in one huge room. America decided to bomb Japan with an atomic bomb so they would release the remaining prisoners. After Japan finally surrendered, the U.S. government made the prisoners sign a document directing them not to share out their experiences in the camp. This was later referred to as the Forgotten War about Japan invading Alaska.